If you have followed me on Twitter in the last week or so, you would know I have a lot to say about this subject, this one hypothetical scenario brought up by writers to gauge interest. Yes, I fell for the trap, but this one scenario, I have had a lot to say about it because of the takes that have spun off of just the bringing up of this scenario, and that is of this ideal of the Cleveland Browns trading Baker Mayfield and assets for Deshaun Watson. Now, why am I so up in arms about this? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick before this video starts, I want to make sure I give a shout out to the patreon.com dog check tier members. And as always, I start with Michael Matique, Rob Farron, Kyle Stouffer, Lukey from Munich, David Roth, J Guy 101, Musty Taco, Joe Bobby, Keith Gerkak, Brad Calbo, Daylon W, James McGinty, Arenda Hall, Rex Kaufman, Chad Gimme, David Molinado, Andrew Sadejo, Dylan Hill, Josh Mendor, Eric Green, Jaleel Salim Jr., Martha Krusna, Mark M, TJ Showman, Stuart Moore, Bobo Regretti, Anthony O, David Arndt, Robert Jermaine Jr., Dave Mike May, John Cummings, Andrew Hirsch, Seth Miller, the only Browns fan in Wisconsin, Curtis Bayer, Batman, Rush Sharir, Barack Kumar, John Alver, Beerman 069, Masayua, Buds of Roland, James Nemo, Mac House, Reeve Hertz, Philip Wilcoxon, Marie Viver, CK, Keith Anderson, Sean Barron, Gagos Pisano, Dom Guzzulo, Nick Nasty, Ian Whitaker, Colin 216, Anthony Latham, Christian, Matt Bond, Dave Strong, Michael Stone, Soul Train, Charles Work, Billy, Michael Holden Acton, Moose Gentry, Patrick F. Austin Z, Mark Burnett II, Andre Griffin, Otis Wolf, IT Rex, Greg Ehlers, Austin Bolin, Jesus Serrano, Chris Phones, Picktown Brown Backers, Mark Kahn, Max Out Dojo, and Water Bear Marketing. Thank you so much for deciding to rock with me throughout the offseason. Your support is instrumental to this channel's ability to be able to provide videos every day. Again, guys, thank you so much. Your help is ginormous. Now, to this Deshaun Watson argument, right? I guess my through line and my thesis for this is there is a lot of benefit of the doubt going for one person and absolutely no benefit of the doubt going for the other person, right, in this argument. And that's my biggest issue when we talk about Deshaun Watson. It's not that Deshaun Watson's not a good quarterback. Hell, it's not even that Deshaun Watson isn't a top 10 quarterback. I don't argue that at all in this video. My argument is more or less about the assumptions that are made to make up an argument for why a team like Cleveland would even consider trading for Deshaun Watson, and why I just don't think that's based in reality, at least in my opinion. Now, again, I'm going to give you guys a disclaimer. This is more or less a rant video. I'm not going to bring up super detailed stats or anything like that. I'm just going to talk you through the argument, what's going on, what's being said in the pro trade for Deshaun Watson side, and my response to it. Now, the argument for Deshaun Watson is that, in many people's opinion, Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback, and in their minds, a top 5 quarterback equals more wins. Now, keep that in mind. Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback, and the logic that they're using, the assumption with that, is that top 5 quarterbacks give you a better chance to win regardless, right? If you don't have a top 5 quarterback and now you do, you have a better chance to win. That is an important assumption that this argument makes that I'm going to pick at. Also, Watson with the Cleveland offensive line would be great because the assumption there is that Deshaun Watson does not have a good offensive line in Houston. And this would put the Browns offense over the hump to stay in title contention. And again, the assumption there is that Baker Mayfield is not good enough to do that. Okay, so that's the argument. That's the assumption, right? A lot of benefit of the doubt goes towards Deshaun Watson, in my opinion, with that argument. Now, let's talk about the first thing. Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback. That's the first assumption. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Now, I know it's sacrilegious. It's become one of those opinions in the NFL that everybody has said. so everybody kind of agrees with, even though I don't think a lot of people watched the Houston Texans play football this year. And I don't blame you. I had to watch the Houston Texans play like their first 4 games because they were all either national TV or AFC North games. And guys, I watched the AFC North games, and I was not impressed with anything I saw in that. Now, granted, that was Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien did get fired. So it was a little bit of a messy situation. But again, that's the assumption. Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback. I'm going to bring that into question because when you talk about top 5 quarterbacks, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, you're talking about Tom Brady, who's in the Super Bowl, you're talking about Russell Wilson, those guys, that echelon of guys. Is Deshaun Watson really on that same tier, given what those guys have accomplished in their NFL careers and given the lack of things that Deshaun Watson has accomplished? Does he really belong with those guys? I just don't think so. I don't think he's remotely close to his accomplishment. I don't think he's even at the level of Andrew Luck when Andrew Luck retired, right? And there were debates about whether Andrew Luck was a top 5 quarterback, but for whatever reason, Deshaun Watson's put on that same tier. He has not accomplished the same thing. You can say he went to the divisional round, and this is the weirdest argument I hear. He put up 24 points on the Chiefs when it's established. The defense on the Chiefs, that's not the hardest part about beating the Chiefs. It's not easy. They do have a good defense, much better than people give them credit for, but that's not the hard part. Answering the Chiefs, matching the Chiefs is much more impressive, and he did not do that. When the Chiefs came back, they lost by 20. So it doesn't matter how many points he put up in the first half against the Chiefs. And especially if you're not going to be giving, any other quarterback who has put up points against the Chiefs that credit, right? I don't see those same people caping for Derek Carr or Baker Mayfield, right? Like they're not caping for them in that same way. So that's just a weird one, right? But Deshaun Watson has gotten a lot of credit and been put on the same echelon as guys who have done a lot more without doing that same amount. So that's one of the issues I have with this whole assumption that Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback. Also, along with this assumption, and oddly enough, as an explanation for this assumption, people will say things like, well, he's just a generational talent. He's undeniable. He's not generational. Now, this is not a slight or a shade to Deshaun Watson. It's just, when you say somebody is a generational talent, you are saying they have a talent that is once in a generation. That's not saying they are so good that it's generational. No, you're saying they have a once in a generation type talent. Patrick Mahomes has a once-in-a-generation type talent with his arm strength and his ability to be accurate off so many different platforms. There just aren't that many guys who have done that in the NFL. You look at Lamar Jackson, right? He's generational in his ability to run the football. This does not mean Lamar is a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson, even though I think that's more of an argument than people want to make. But it does mean that Lamar Jackson is definitely a generational talent because he has something that's generational about himself. Brady and Peyton Manning, their ability to dissect defenses is definitely generational, that kind of genius. Watson, while he's really good, is not a generational talent. There's nothing generational about his talent. He's not spectacular because of his talent. He's spectacular because of his ability to improvise. But again, even that isn't on the same level as a Russell Wilson in his prime, like in 2015 or something like that. So while it is good, it's not generational. I don't get where people are getting this whole generational thing. He's always had average arm strength. That's never been a thing with him, that he's had great arm strength. It's always been average to close to below average. He has great velocity, but he doesn't have great range on his deep ball. That's always been a thing with Deshaun Watson. He's fast, but he ain't Lamar Jackson. Like, there's nothing generational about this guy. There's nothing he can do that nobody in a generation has done on the NFL football field. So he's not generational. It's arguable if he's top 5 in my opinion. But you know what? All that aside, right? Let's just give you that he's top 5, right? Let's say I don't want to argue that Deshaun Watson's a top 5 quarterback. Let's just say, for argument's sake, he's a top 5 quarterback. The assumption with top 5 quarterback is that you think a top 5 quarterback equals more wins. Well, Deshaun Watson went 4-12 this year. And he had a career year and was healthy all year. And you can blame this on his defense, But I'll tell you two teams who arguably had worse defenses: the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys, who played significant portions of their seasons without a quarterback. And they won more games than the team with the generational top 5 quarterback. So either one of the two assumptions is wrong, right? Either the assumption that Deshaun Watson is a top 5 quarterback is wrong, because top 5 quarterbacks are supposed to equal more wins, right? That's the math that we're doing here. Or the assumption that top 5 quarterbacks equal more wins is wrong. Either way, if top 5 quarterbacks do not make you win more games than they would if you don't have a top 5 quarterback and you had somebody like in the 10 to 12 range, like Baker Mayfield, then it would be irrelevant to trade for that guy. Or if the argument is that Deshaun Watson's not a top 5 quarterback, then it would make even less sense to trade for him. So either way, that assumption breaks down, right? You can blame the 4-12 on the defense. You can blame it on whatever you want to blame it on. And I'm not saying it's all on Deshaun, but what I am saying is that even a quarterback, a generational top 5 quarterback who's playing at his best in his career, is not good enough to just win you games in the NFL, then that tells you that you should not sacrifice your future for a quarterback who would be a marginal upgrade to what you already have. That is the argument, right? Whether you think Deshaun Watson is better or not, that's irrelevant. Even if he was miles, leaps above better than Baker Mayfield, the fact still remains that you did not win a ton of games in Houston with him simply because he's really good at quarterback. So that comes into question, right? How many more wins are you going to get if you make this trade? Is it really worth it? How does this bring you closer to a Super Bowl? Another issue I have is the assumption is, oh, well, it brings you closer to a Super Bowl. How has Deshaun Watson proved that he is somebody who's going to bring you closer to a Super Bowl? How close to a Super Bowl has he gotten? And has he gotten closer to a Super Bowl than Baker Mayfield? The answer is no. And then we get to the most ridiculous argument. This proves to me when people make this argument or excuse for Deshaun Watson, and look, he's a really good quarterback. I don't want to get this lost. He's a no doubt top 10 quarterback. Baker Mayfield's not a no doubt top 10 quarterback, even though I think you can make the argument that this year he was a top 10 quarterback. Deshaun Watson, no doubt top 10 quarterback, okay? I'm not even arguing who's better or not here. But what I am saying is that when people make some of these excuses for Deshaun Watson, they expose themselves to not watching a ton of Houston Texans football. And that tells me that you really don't know how good Deshaun Watson is or how bad he is or what he's good and bad at, because you just don't watch the Texans play that much. And again, I don't blame you. The Texans aren't good, but don't talk about Deshaun Watson as if you watch the Texans play when you say things that make it obvious that you don't watch the Texans play football. And this is the argument that gets me. When people just go, well, Deshaun Watson's had a terrible offensive line. He's had an awful offensive line. He needs a good offensive line to win games in the NFL. Everybody knows that, Quincy. He's had a bad offensive line. One, I would like to point out that's the same argument that people use in the negative to Baker Mayfield to justify a trade, right? Baker needs all these things around him to be good. Deshaun don't need those things, but you're arguing me, on the other hand, that Deshaun needs a good offensive line to win games. So which one is it? Again, it never makes sense with this argument with Deshaun Watson, because again, it is living off of assumption, off of benefit of the doubt, because a lot of this is just word of mouth when it comes to Deshaun Watson. And also another thing I like to point out, quarterbacks do have a role in how good their protections are. Like, that is a thing. Quarterbacks play a role in that. It's not a massive role. It's not more than the left tackle or more than the people on the offensive line, but they do play a role in that, right? They do take sacks that are unnecessary, and that's what Deshaun Watson does a ton of. Because would you be surprised if I told you that the Texans this year had the number 9 out of 32 pass blocking offensive line? This offensive line that people tell me he can't win behind was top 10 in the NFL. And he could not win more than 4 games behind that offensive line. So why is the assumption that he comes to Cleveland and he's going to change the Browns' fortunes from 11-5 to what, undefeated? Because he's Deshaun Watson and he's playing behind a good offensive line? He's been playing behind a good offensive line. He's been had Laramie Tunsil. They have been drained resources into the offensive line to make Deshaun happy. But the problem is that Deshaun holds the ball too long sometimes. Deshaun takes bad sacks sometimes. These are all things that come with watching Deshaun Watson in the Houston Texans. He is really good. He can get you 3rd and 20s all the time. Like, he can do that consistently. The reason I know that is because I've seen him on 1st down get 5 yards, on 2nd down lose 10 yards, and then get 20 back. That's awesome, but that also inflates his stats. That also kind of makes it seem like he's doing much better than he is. And that's also a reason on why he can put up great individual numbers, but they don't translate to wins as often as you would see with other top 5 quarterbacks. Because if you look at the other guys in that top 5 range, they've never sniffed 4-12. But Deshaun has been 4-12 healthy. And there's a serious question on if he would even be a fit in Stefanski's offense. Again, he's not this like uniquely super talented quarterback who could just fit any system. He has real weaknesses. His arm strength is something that has been masked in Houston where he's in a dome, right? Like, and he plays in a division that has a ton of domes in them. So he doesn't have to be exposed to the elements. When we saw him exposed to the elements, it severely limited his passing game. You can go back and watch the Browns game versus the Texans to see that. Baker has a stronger arm than him. Yes, Deshaun Watson is mobile, but he's not a great play-action quarterback the way Baker Mayfield is. Baker's just a better fit for a Stefanski offense than Deshaun Watson is. Now, if you put them both in the offense that they're best fit in, yeah, more than likely Deshaun Watson might come out with better stats, right, than Baker Mayfield. Because at this point in their career, Deshaun is better than Baker. But it's not a massive difference. And it's not a difference that's so massive that Deshaun can go into an offense that doesn't fit him while Baker's in an offense that fits him like a glove, and all of a sudden Deshaun's going to be better than Baker. Like, there's an argument on whether he could be better in this system than Baker Mayfield is, especially playing in Cleveland where it's going to be very windy. And again, Deshaun Watson, one of his biggest weaknesses is his arm strength. It's always been. Now, those are all the reasons why you wouldn't want to do it even if you were in a position to consider it. Here's why the Browns aren't in a position to even consider this. What in the world about the Cleveland Browns in 2020 told you the offense was the bottleneck with this team? Like, what told you after that game or after this season that, you know what the Browns need to spend all their cap space on? The offense. Did we not watch Carl Joseph and Andrew Sadeo chase wide receivers all season? Like, have we lost focus on what this team was obviously not as good at? Did we not see Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward play 2 on 11 most of the season? Like, come on. Like, at some point, we have to also have this conversation of why would you even upgrade the offense? Even if it was an upgrade for the offense, do you need to upgrade the offense? Was the offense the reason you didn't win a single game this year? The answer is no. So why would you make a trade to make your offense stronger when you have obvious needs and obvious uses for that cap space elsewhere? So that is why the Deshaun Watson trade on like 15 different levels, right? Even if you believe Deshaun Watson's better than Baker Mayfield, even if you think that he's a top 5 quarterback, even if you think he's generational, there is nothing that logically tells you that this would be something that would make the Browns a better football team or more equipped to beat the Chiefs than they were this year. So that's why I just don't think it makes any sense. And that's even if I give you a lot of generous assumptions about Deshaun Watson. And that's why I just wanted to get this video out, say my piece, and be done with it. Because this ideal makes no sense. There is no good that can come out of it. And a lot of this energy is better off spent talking about guys who can actually help this team next year. So that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.